Tonight, the federal government secures support from the states and territories to overhaul the NDIS. Hello, I'm Guy Stayner. This is ABC News. Also tonight, more Tasmanian workers take industrial action demanding more resources as the state's finances deteriorate. Barack and Michelle Obama go after Donald Trump on day 2 of the Democratic National Convention. And keeping crocodiles as pets becomes an election issue in the Northern Territory. The National Disability Insurance Scheme is set for a major overhaul after the federal government secured support from the states and territories. The changes are aimed at reducing the rising costs of the $35 billion scheme, but the disability community is demanding a rethink.
After months of hard-fought negotiations with the states and territories, finally a breakthrough.
These are the first and most significant co-governance changes since the inception of the scheme a decade ago.
Labor's proposed changes are designed to rein in the ballooning cost of the NDIS.
It's growing at an unsustainable rate.
Costs projected to grow by 14% a year would be reduced to 8% through a system based on need rather than diagnosis. Greater government powers to seize any account suspected of fraud, and a new definition of what constitutes an NDIS support that's still to be negotiated with the states and territories.
We already provide significant additional support. We want to make sure that the federal government continues to recognise that as we move forward with the future changes to the NDIS.
To get the states on board, they've been offered faster decision-making on new NDIS rules and a move from unanimous to majority support from premiers and chief ministers for rule changes with significant impacts on people with disability. In terms of the budget, the stakes for the government are high, but not as high as they are for the community. For many, the NDIS is what gives them safety and independence, and major disability representative organisations are urging senators to vote against this legislation tomorrow.
Mr Shorten has been talking about making an agreement with the states and territories, which is great, but we were not there and we're not at the table.
We're not scared of change, but we are scared of this bill. It puts our lives and our freedom and our rights in danger.
The reality is that what we are doing is securing the future of the scheme, and that is what matters.
The legislation is expected to pass the Parliament with coalition support. Claudia Long, ABC News, Canberra.
Allied health workers from the Royal Hobart Hospital are the latest to walk off the job in protest over inadequate staffing levels. They join a growing list of sectors taking industrial action, putting pressure on the state government for more resources. But the state's coffers are in trouble, with economist Saul Eslake warning Tasmania's heading towards a $16 billion debt burden within a decade.
Another day, another set of public sector staff loudly walking off the job.
Save staffing now!
Medical imaging workers say 30% of positions in their area at the Royal Hobart Hospital are vacant.
We can barely manage to keep up with the inpatient load, so that's emergency patients and critical patients that are having delayed diagnosis and then delayed treatment and management because of our lack of staffing.
We don't make this decision lightly. It negatively affects us too, but we can't keep working under these conditions.
They join child safety staff, nurses, midwives and more in current industrial action, all demanding more resources and warning of the impact of budget savings measures like the efficiency dividend or vacancy controls.
We need to be blunt, and it hurts to hear it, but in a health context, it means people will get sicker and some of them might die. In education, it means that our kids are not going to be up to the right standards.
The government says it's working with health unions in good faith. Economist Saul Eslake has highlighted Tasmania's ever-growing debt burden, but recommended against cuts to public services to fix it. He says Tasmania is already spending $880 less per person than the national average on public services.
The next budget that will be delivered on the 12th of September is going to be a very challenging budget for Tasmanians if the Liberals go ahead with those huge cuts.
We are investing more money into housing, health, cost of living and, of course, education. Investing more, not less.
A challenging budget ahead. Josh Duggan, ABC News.
Politicians could soon be suspended from federal parliament, kicked off powerful committees and even fined up to 5% of their salary if they're found to have engaged in misconduct. A new independent commission is set to be established nearly 4 years after a damning report into the toxic culture of federal parliament was handed down.
Modernising old institutions takes time and will.
This legislation today is designed to move our parliament forward one more step.
A step towards a workplace that actually sets the standard for others.
Every other workplace in the country has these standards of behaviour and parliament should too.
For the first time in the history of Parliament, codes of conduct for politicians and staffers have been written and endorsed. Now they'll be enforced. An independent Parliamentary Standards Commission is set to be established to investigate serious misconduct and sanction the culprits, including MPs and senators themselves.
The sanctions we're looking at are suspension, removal from a parliamentary committee or a fine. Plus, I guess, the transparency that comes with this process.
While investigations will be kept secret, it'll be up to Parliament's 13-person Privileges Committee and ultimately the Parliament to determine which penalty should apply.
For years, politicians have behaved badly and got away with it, but that changes today.
It's the final recommendation of Kate Jenkins' landmark 2021 report, which lifted the lid on bad behaviour at Parliament House. A report triggered by the alleged rape of former staffer Brittany Higgins inside a ministerial office.
A set standard report found that bullying, harassment, other complaints were common in this workplace, and we're trying to change that.
Cultural change is happening here, albeit slowly. Parliament's adopted more family-friendly sitting hours and a new workplace support service has been set up, bringing an HR service to a building that lacked one. But in an atypical workplace where conflict is embedded, some reckon there's still room to lift the tone of debate.
The shouting, the mocking, the name-calling. I have never stood in a boardroom and been yelled at.
Jane Norman, ABC News, Canberra.
Australia's Domestic Violence Commissioner says more resources are urgently needed amid a national crisis of men's violence against women. Michaela Cronin today delivered her first progress report on the national plan to end gendered violence. She says there's a critical need to talk more with men about their violent behaviours and put greater focus on sexual violence. The Commissioner also reiterated calls for more frontline services funding.
Our service systems are overwhelmed, stretched beyond capacity. They are struggling to hold on to staff, and they are really at wit's end.
America's former First Family has taken centre stage as the Democratic Party continues its 4-day-long party celebrating its presidential candidate. Barack and Michelle Obama received rapturous applause as they heaped praise on Kamala Harris and scorn upon Donald Trump.
The president who broke barriers.
I'm feeling fired up.
Arguing for history to be made again.
We have a chance to elect someone who has spent her entire life trying to give people the same chances America gave her.
While he heaped praise on Harris, he was scornful of the man she's up against, Donald Trump.
There's the childish nicknames, this weird obsession with crowd sizes.
The 44th president was introduced by his wife, who's also wildly popular with the Democratic base.
America, hope is making a comeback.
Michelle Obama also skewered the man who replaced her husband as commander-in-chief back in 2017.
His limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of two hard-working, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black. Who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
What was your highlight?
Oh, Michelle Obama, definitely.
Of course, the Obamas in their speech.
Alabama.
Kamala Harris was already the official nominee.
Georgia, how do you cast your vote?
So this year, the roll call was only symbolic, but still enthusiastically embraced by delegates.
CHC, turn out for what?
The Democratic Party's pick was beamed in from a rally in the neighbouring swing state of Wisconsin.
They have nominated Coach Walz and me to be the next vice president and president.
Her Republican rival was also on the campaign trail in another Midwest swing state, Michigan.
We're here today to talk about how we are going to stop the Kamala crime wave.
Kamala Harris had a rapid and unusual path to the top of the party ticket. That means this convention doesn't feature the acrimony or resentment often left over from a bruising primary. Perhaps the most important gift the departing Joe Biden gave his anointed successor is a party seemingly extraordinarily united.
Democrats drawing inspiration from their past glory.
Yes, she can.
And hoping they can pull off what until recently seemed an unlikely victory. Carrington Clark, ABC News, Chicago.
The US Secretary of State has departed the Middle East with an agreement between Israel and Hamas still elusive. Antony Blinken and mediators from Egypt and Qatar have pinned their hopes on a US bridging proposal aimed at narrowing the gaps between the two sides. Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister met with right-wing groups of families of fallen soldiers and hostages in Gaza who oppose a ceasefire deal. It came as the IDF released video which purportedly shows the operation to recover the bodies of 6 hostages taken in Hamas's October 7 attack. It brings fresh grief for those Israelis who want Benjamin Netanyahu to agree to a ceasefire and bring the more than 100 remaining hostages home. In Gaza City, Palestinian health authorities say at least 10 people were killed in an Israeli strike on a school housing displaced people. Russia says it's shot down nearly a dozen Ukrainian drones headed for Moscow in one of the largest attacks on the Russian capital. Dozens more were shot down over Russian border regions where Ukraine has been targeting critical infrastructure like bridges and oil depots. Meanwhile, Moscow continues its military pressure in Ukraine's east and south, where a 14-year-old boy has been killed after a rocket attack.
This kiosk ablaze in what is normally a sleepy southern Ukrainian village. Locals say soccer practice had just got started nearby when a Russian shell fell directly onto it. After the explosion, players and spectators scattered.
The children that were injured were here. They didn't speak at all because they were in shock. We took everyone out immediately.
In Ukraine's northeast, residents have been enduring some of their most difficult days. The precarious calm in this region gone since Kyiv's cross-border offensive began.
I've never heard such explosions. I went outside last night, it was burning over there, and the sky was red.
A fortnight on, the Ukrainian military continues its advance on Russian soil, claiming it now controls nearly 100 settlements in Kursk. The operation has boosted Ukrainian soldiers' morale, but it's not clear how much the allies abroad support it. Volodymyr Zelensky revealing he didn't talk to Washington as his government planned the attack.
When it comes to what their longer-term objectives are here, that's something that we're still discussing with them. And I would say, generally speaking, though, Russia has really struggled to respond.
Vladimir Putin may not be close to winning the war against Ukraine, but he has a history of military success. His tough guy image has made him popular with many Russians.
You have an inner need to defend this country, and such courage. We're so proud of you.
Chechnya was Putin's first victory. Now the once separatist Chechens are fighting for Moscow in Ukraine. Putin's visit a reminder of past glories, even as his troops today struggle against a much more formidable foe. Catherine Diss, ABC News.
Back home, and students living at the University of Tasmania's Inveresk campus have had to leave and move to another campus due to an ongoing power outage in Launceston. An underground cable was damaged yesterday, which meant the university was closed, as was the neighbouring museum and cafe. Traffic lights in Invermay, Inveresk and Launceston CBD were also affected, as were several businesses. The electrical union says its workers are refusing to repair the power outage as part of its continued industrial action fighting for better pay. TasNetwork says it's unclear when the issue will be resolved and that it's offering an enterprise agreement that supports and rewards its workers. Jetstar has joined the ranks of its parent company Qantas in facing a class action over flights cancelled during COVID. The claim, launched by the same firm, Echo Law, alleges Jetstar failed to refund money to hundreds of thousands of customers, instead giving them flight credits. Many customers ended up paying the airline more money to use those credits to rebook their flights. Both class actions are seeking refunds and compensation for customers. Many of us have embraced the joys of shopping online with offers like free shipping and no-cost returns offered as enticements. But businesses are starting to wind back on those incentives to help save costs, with some risking a customer backlash.
Workers at this online lingerie retailer are packaging up hundreds of orders a day.
Free shipping over $99 and otherwise it's $8.99, which is less than it costs us.
But Curvy is now upping these costs as its own margins fall and delivery costs rise.
Why can't you just give me free shipping on everything?
With Australia Post rising their prices significantly, particularly recently, we don't have the margins to do that.
Australia Post says its prices are competitive. Other retailers like the iconic David Jones, Kogan and Chemist Warehouse have also upped delivery thresholds in recent times.
A lot of retailers have found how unsustainable it is to give away everything for nothing.
Data from the tech company shows that fewer retailers are offering free shipping, with the number down 11% from 5 years ago. The average shipping cost has risen to more than $10. And retailers are now telling customers it'll take almost 6 days to get them an order. Shipit's data also shows that retailers like ASOS are ending free returns.
The challenge for a lot of retailers is if you've offered free returns, can I take it away? And as soon as you take it away, your sales drop.
Environmental advocates say this might actually be a good thing because free returns have been incentivising us to buy stuff we don't necessarily know we want and then return it. Curvy only offers free returns on faulty products, and sometimes they don't always get back their own product. What's the weirdest return you've ever had?
We've definitely had scissors, light bulbs.
Delivering a shock in the mail for retailers. Amelia Turzon, ABC News.
The Commonwealth has granted environmental approval for a 12,000 hectare solar farm in the remote Northern Territory, pitched as the world's largest renewable energy project. As part of the project, Sun Cable hopes to build a facility near Tasmania's Bell Bay to manufacture the subsea cable. Costing more than $30 billion, the project will transport electricity to Singapore via Darwin and has been signed off by the federal government after the NT government gave it the green light last month. The project still has a number of hurdles to clear, including negotiations with Indigenous landowner groups and a final investment decision in 2027. Federal Environment Minister Tanya Plibersek says the landmark project could transform energy production in the NT. A woman who smashed a glass and threatened a pro-Palestinian protester with the jagged stem has been sentenced in court. 66-year-old Sharon Hall pleaded guilty to 1 count of assault over the incident during a Deborah Conway concert at Hobart's Playhouse Theatre in May. The court heard Hall had become frustrated by the repeated interruptions and the attack was not politically motivated. Hall was convicted and must complete 49 hours of community work. Both the local share market and the Aussie dollar kept rising today. Here's Alan Kohler.
Jackson Hole kicks off tomorrow. That's the name of the annual symposium of central bankers and economists hosted by the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, in a valley in Wyoming called Jackson Hole. which is 1,000 miles from Kansas City. But it looks like this, which is a bit nicer than the biggest city in Missouri. All eyes will be on the speech by Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, and he's expected to confirm that US interest rates are about to be cut. So the US dollar has been weakening ahead of Jackson Hole, which is why the Aussie dollar has been rising and went up again today. And gold has been rising as well to a new record high last night, partly because of the weak US dollar, but mainly because of Chinese buying, both by the People's Bank of China avoiding US treasuries and private Chinese investors avoiding the collapsing property market. This is the third great gold bull market since the link between the US dollar and gold was broken by Richard Nixon on August the 15th, 1971, in what is known as the Nixon shock, finally ending the backing of money by gold. And this chart from Bloomberg today is quite interesting. It's the main US share market index, the S&P 500, expressed in gold rather than dollars. And well, it's the same as it was in 1971. The S&P 500 ended its 7-day winning streak last night, but the Aussie market did not. The streak goes on. 9 days now. I don't think there's been one of those since 2016. Today's big profit season winners were finance company Hum Group and tech business WiseTech, whose founder, CEO and largest shareholder Richard White made an extra $1.7 billion today. And that is definitely finance.
Queensland equal rights activist Merle Thornton has died and is being remembered as a trailblazer who fought for women's rights. She's most famous for chaining herself to the bar at Brisbane's Regatta Hotel with her friend Rosalie Bogner to protest a ban on women being served in public bars. It's still considered a defining moment in Australian feminism, attracting national attention and bringing forward a change in Queensland laws. In a statement, Queensland Premier Stephen Miles said she helped make Queensland a better, brighter place. Merle Thornton was 93. Australian tennis player Nick Kyrgios says it's ridiculous that the world number one Jannik Sinner has escaped suspension after testing positive to a banned substance. Sinner twice tested positive to an anabolic steroid in March, and an independent tribunal accepted his explanation that the substance inadvertently entered his system through massages and sports therapy. The 23-year-old Italian will lose the prize money and ranking points from the Indian Wells tournament, where he recorded one of his positive tests. On social media, Kyrgios posted that Sinner should have been suspended for 2 years due to an enhanced performance and cast doubt on the reason for the positive tests. Sinner says he will put the deeply unfortunate period behind him as he prepares for next week's US Open. Port Adelaide is set to challenge Dan Houston's 5-match ban for his bump on Adelaide's Isaac Rankin during last weekend's AFL showdown. The suspension means the All-Australian defender might have played his last game for the Power, as the 27-year-old is said to be wanting to return to Victoria.
It's season over for one of Port Adelaide's most important players. Dan Houston was outed for 5 matches after this hit on Isaac Rankin, leaving the Crows star concussed. It means Houston would be suspended, even if the Power were to get all the way to the grand final. The club is appealing the verdict in an effort to reduce the ban and possibly get the 27-year-old back later in the final series. The Bulldogs season is also on the line ahead of a crucial clash with Greater Western Sydney. The match will have added importance for Luke Beveridge, who will break the club record for number of games coached, passing Bulldogs legend Ted Whitten.
I've got a bit left to give, so at some point I'll reflect on it. But it's important, I think, more than ever, this week that our focus is on the team.
Ireland's AFL Games record holder Zach Tui is set to call time on his football journey at the end of the year. The 34-year-old midfielder has enjoyed a remarkable career across both Geelong and Carlton after being recruited out of Ireland in 2010, and he's just one of 3 Irish players to win an AFL premiership.
I just wanted to thank you for everything. Geelong, the club and the city has been incredible for me and my family. I consider myself a Geelong person forever.
And after missing selection last week, Dyson Heppell will get a chance to farewell the Essendon faithful in the Bombers' last game of the season. Out of finals contention, Saturday's clash against Brisbane will be Heppell's 253rd and final game in the red and black. Fraser Fife, ABC News.
The Jack Jumpers have finalised their playing roster for the upcoming season, signing a pair of development players. 23-year-old forward Archie Woodhill has penned a one-year deal. He's most recently been playing with the Northwest Thunder in the NBL 1 competition and has previously spent time with the Sydney Kings. Joining him as a Jack Jumper will be 24-year-old guard Nicholas Stoddart, who's averaged 14 points for the Ballarat Miners, also in the NBL 1. The signings come off the back of the club's decision to part ways with next star player Roman Sualipa and ahead of the team's trip to Singapore for the FIBA Intercontinental Cup next month. Dogs, cats and maybe even a goldfish. But what about having a crocodile as a pet? Days out from the Northern Territory election, it's become a campaign issue. The two major parties are split on whether to allow new permits for prospective salty owners.
Roger Matthews catches crocs that threaten lives and property across the Northern Territory, but he'd rather see salties rehomed.
It's disappointing for me because not everyone ends up on the slab. There's half a dozen people that I've had to knock back from having a pet crocodile.
The seasoned crocodile handler says the Labor government's plan to not issue new licences left him blindsided.
I had no idea that was going to be part of the plan of management at all.
One of those prospective owners is Tom Hayes, heartbroken he can't live out a boyhood dream of owning an apex predator as a pet.
It is from a farm, so now we're not quite sure what's going to happen. I can't help this big, old, beautiful animal. And that breaks my heart a little bit.
Owners like Jo Langham, whose husband received a permit before the rule change, will remain unaffected. She says looking after her croc, Horry, is easy.
No pet sitters, no walking, no coochie cooing required.
But owning one of these beasts isn't for the faint-hearted and requires stringent safety conditions.
It's not really something to be entered into lightly. You're still playing with a wild creature and you need to know what to expect.
Owning one of these animals has become somewhat of a political battleground in the Northern Territory, with both the country Liberal opposition and the Labor Party staking their claims on crocodile pet ownership in an attempt to snap up votes.
Let's remember they are an apex predator and probably not one that's best kept for captivity.
In a statement, the country Liberal Party says it supports the rights of Territorians to own crocs as pets under a permit system, and it would review the new permit ban if elected. A truly Territorian political scrap. Miles Holbrook-Walk, ABC News.
Pets for a very long leash, methinks. To the weather, and tonight's photo of winter surfers at Bicheno is from Harriet Atkins. Northwesterly winds brought warmer temperatures to the south today. Hobart and Swansea topped the state with 18 degrees. It was 16 in Launceston, Devonport and Burnie. Cooler in the west, 13 in Strawn. The rain was heaviest around the northwest yesterday and overnight. Marrawar had 35 millimetres, Wynyard 29, Devonport 25. The satellite image shows the rain band heading out to sea today with a few scattered remnant showers crossing the state. Tomorrow, a large high over the mainland will put us into a strong west to northwesterly airstream. Across the country tomorrow, rain in Perth, more showers for Adelaide, Melbourne and Canberra, 22 in Sydney, up to 27 degrees in Brisbane. Yes, it is still winter. Back home, there'll be scattered showers about the west with isolated showers developing elsewhere, falling as snow down to 900 metres. There's a very high chance of showers about the west tomorrow. Between 8 and 30 millimetres is forecast for Strawn and Queenstown. A high chance of showers about the northwest. But there should be no more than a millimetre or two for Burnie and Devonport. There's a medium chance of showers in Launceston, should be less than 2 millimetres there with a top of 14 degrees. Staying dry along the east coast, 15 in St Helens, 16 for Swansea. There's a high chance of showers in Ouse. And Hobart will have a medium chance of showers, should be less than 2 millimetres with a top of 15 after a low of 9. Up to 10 millimetres could fall in the Huon Valley. Sunrise tomorrow will be at 8 minutes to 7. On coastal waters there'll be west to northwesterly winds of 15 to 30 knots, reaching up to 40 knots about the south and west. There are gale warnings from Tasman Island to Sandy Cape and strong wind warnings for all other coastal waters as well as the southwest lakes. Friday, a few showers across much of the state. Saturday, it looks like we're in for another very wet day about the north, with rain extending statewide during the day, and the wet outlook is going to extend well into next week. And that is the program. Up next is 7:30. See you tomorrow.